beans. Asked when rice essentially matures, Marang stated that it takes 3 to 5 months for the crop to fully grow. Crops have different growth stages according to the witness, who explained the phases starting from the seedling stage, vegetative and late vegetative stage, reproductive and ripening stages. Marang described the seedling stage as the moment after the crop's germination, noting that compost will not have much effect on plant development at the late growth stage, although urea is helpful at this stage for rice development. Fertilizer applied in October will not have much or any impact on the development of crops grown in May, Alfu Marang submitted. According to the witness, Dr. Langmarina did not specify the kind of crops he applied fertilizer on and failed to discern any effect, and he did not inquire as well. Asked why his agronomic instincts failed to be interested in the type of crop, the witness said this would depend on the nature of their conversation. The former permanent secretary further revealed that he doesn't know what fertilizer Dr. Marina used on his crops. I never conducted a demonstration on the fertilizer brand called NPK 15-15-15. The plant breeding expert stated before Justice Amadi brought proceedings to a standstill, rescheduling the case to the 9th of June 2012 for continuation. That date is set to be decisive for the defense as well, who have filed yet another motion for bail on behalf of the 7 accused persons following the dismissal of 2 applications by the High Court. Ibrahima Jatta, GRTS.
Well, you can also follow that story and other GRTS programs live on our website, which is at www.grts.gm. There you can also monitor GRTS Radio Live. While we go with our very first break, stay tuned.
The Gambia Chamber of Commerce and Industry, with a new initiative, one company, one community. It's the GCCI Business Award Dinner. Theme, standing by the Gambian farmer.
I think it's a laudable initiative. Some of the proceeds of the dinner, they said, would go towards assisting those farmers.
Because of that, I guess the Chamber of Commerce has decided to come into the picture and to partner with farmers, develop solidarity with the farmers in support of their current plight.
Support a worthy cause under the patronage of His Excellency the President, Chef Professor Alhaji Dr. Yahya AJJ Jammeh.
We are appealing to all our members and all people in the business community to come and support us.
On the 1st of June 2012 at the Coco Ocean Resort and Spa Hotel at 8 p.m.
Welcome back. To news from outside the Gambia, there is alarming evidence that the Sudanese military is using a type of bomb against rebels that is so indiscriminate and brutal that more than 100 countries have agreed to not use them. CNN's David Mackenzie has more now on the cluster bombs apparently falling in Sudan.
Nestling in a crater watched over by villagers, a deadly and illegal weapon. A Soviet-era RBK-500 cluster bomb, which failed to detonate after being dropped on this remote village in Sudan. Bomblets litter the nearby fields. Each of these bombs carries 126 submunitions. Damning evidence that the government of Sudan is using such weapons in its campaign against rebels in the area. But it's civilians who are the victims of this conflict. People in the area say they hear the drone of warplanes almost daily. They scramble into caves and climb into stone shelters when the bombs start falling.
Cluster bombs are known to be indiscriminate, unreliable weapons. This is why they've been banned under international law. And really it's the humanitarian impact of these weapons that makes it so atrocious that Sudan has used them.
Human Rights Watch says the government's bombing of this area may amount to war crimes, and has demanded an end to what it calls indiscriminate attacks. A Sudanese military spokesman told CNN, quote, "We don't use cluster munitions in South Kordofan. We have no ties to such weapons." Adding, there is no need to use these kind of weapons to begin with. The fighting is in open space. The renegades don't have concrete fortifications. He also insisted these pictures could have been taken anywhere. But we know they were taken near the village of Angolo, and villagers say the bombing never stops. Today they bombed with their airplanes, says this resident. They bombed up there in the mountains and close to here. The rebels in this area, the SPLM North group, want to be part of the newly independent South. They depend on the civilian population for support and food. So the Sudan government's military strategy appears to be to terrify civilians into fleeing the area and to starve the rebels out. And many have. Every day, more than 500 arrive in camps like Yida, many of them desperate for food. Here, the children draw the Antonov bombers that have devastated their villages. 2,000 of them have arrived in the camp as orphans.
The pattern of warfare now, we see a higher and higher percentage of civilian casualties because it's not the old traditional war where it's armies meeting in a designated field. It is a warfare that involves many, many civilian casualties.
Khartoum denies it has ever used cluster munitions, but the Danish demining group says there is a pattern of cluster bomb use in Sudanese wars. These Chilean-made PM-1 bomblets are still found throughout South Sudan, dropped by Sudanese bombers during the bitter civil war. Years after the fighting, these armored-piercing munitions are just as deadly.
They can land in fields, in homes, in villages, and of course it poses a risk to civilians. And civilians do not recognize what is a bomblet and dangerous and highly explosive and what is a toy. So you see now a lot of curious children after these raids go and identify these exciting and new objects and blow their hands and heads off.
A terrible legacy for the villagers of South Kordofan. More than 100 countries have signed up to the convention to ban cluster munitions. Sudan says it will as soon as possible. But on this evidence, the government seems very reluctant to surrender these weapons and the terror they inflict. David McKenzie, CNN, Nairobi, Kenya.
A resident in the Syrian town of Hula says government forces are shelling the area again. Last week, more than 100 men, women and children were killed in Hula on a single day. Syria says it expects to complete its investigation into the massacre this week. Despite the government's probe into the killings, people in Hula say they already know who is responsible. We will bring you details of that development in our 10 o'clock news bulletin. Well, that takes us to our second break. Stay tuned.
Nakala chilan. Register mo way. Wayo, go hard with chicken. Waxtu wi jot na de ñu ci me so ma register wu te dañ ma dog de te do waxati June 15 ku register wu dañ la dog register mo way.
Man de register na.
Man
sam register na.
Well, from that we shift our attention to the weather report by the Central Focus Office.
Exotic sceneries in the world. The baobab tree is a symbol of resilience, wisdom, and resourcefulness. For the baobab tree provides good food in times of hunger, rents its bark for medications, and its sap for glue. In the Gambia, there is a company like the baobab tree, 100% African and purely Gambian in all aspects. In know-how, design, value, capital, and management. That company is Elton. Elton, employing hundreds of Gambians and proudly associating itself with development in the Gambia. Elton, side by side with the Gambia.
Hello there, wonderful viewers. Welcome to the weather segment. First, we begin with the summary followed by the forecast. We experience a warm and sunny atmosphere across the country, and we now look at the satellite image to know what prevailed over the rest of the continent. It indicates the presence of convective clouds over the coast of Gulf of Guinea states, which will cause precipitation and thunderstorm over the area. For the forecast tonight, we are expecting a relatively cool and dry atmosphere to prevail over the West Coast region, becoming relatively warm over the inland areas. These conditions will continue onwards morning. The day tomorrow will be expecting a warm and sunny atmosphere to prevail across the country, with humid conditions over the inland areas. Light gentle westerly breeze will dominate the flow over the coastline, becoming southwesterlies over the inland areas. Morning temperatures will vary between 21 and 26 degrees Celsius, whilst afternoon temperatures will vary between 31 and 40 degrees Celsius. For those going to sea, we were expecting a low tide of 0.31 meters at 12:35 a.m.